Back now with financial planner Al Hicks. Al, we watch the national investment shows, the national money shows, and we get scared.
Absolutely. You know, in our industry, we call that actually financial porn. So we always say, shut it off, because it's not really real. Their focus is always on the very, very, very short term. The micro, as we call it. And we don't live in the micro. The micro is where the laboratory exists. We live in the macro world where things change and we have to make decisions accordingly. But I always say, turn it off because it's so frustrating. And then, you know, and I say, go to your cottage or your cabin up north for a week and then don't have any access to any of that national stuff. And then it's amazing when you come back, nothing changed, it doesn't feel like. So I'm a big believer in, I watch the news every day. I watch some of the financial stuff that goes on. I have to. But I would tell you, I get almost all my news locally. And it's where my life really is. I live locally. I don't live in New York City. I don't live in LA. I live locally. So I want to know what's going on in my high school sports. I want to know what's going on locally in our elections. I want to know what's going on in my municipality. And then I want to know what's going on just right around me. And that's what really impacts me. The other stuff has an impact, but it tends to be very fearful. And if it's fearful, people get scared, and then we start going down the path of making all the wrong decisions when it comes financially.
Yeah. National debt in the trillions. How did we get here? Because in the Kennedy days, back in the Kennedy administration, we had a surplus, and a big one.
You know, we got there by not paying attention. By, oh, this is just a little bit. It's just a little bit. It's really like how credit cards work for individuals when they get into credit card trouble. It's typically not some major expense. It's typically some smaller expense as we go along. But the federal government's really got a problem right now, and that is they keep raising the debt limit, and then they say, okay, we're going to spend up to that, and then they spend past it, and then every year they have to redo the debt limit. And there's a lot of fear right now that's being expressed and causing people to really worry about the debt ceiling. Will it be raised? And the answer is absolutely it's going to be raised. It's always raised. It just comes with a little bit of conflict. And one of the things that I look at is the debt ceiling will be raised, but we need to have a conversation about the process. And so no business, no individual, no couple in America ever does it the way that the federal government does it. They raise the debt ceiling, then they raise their debt past it and have to raise the debt ceiling again. It's kind of nutsos. But we're going to do it. And we have to also understand that when people talk about that Social Security is going to be cut off or our Medicare recipients are going to lose their benefits because of the debt ceiling isn't signed, you know, that is political rhetoric that scares people, but it isn't going to happen. And let me explain why this is not going to happen. We know that the largest voting bloc in America is the Social Security and the Medicare recipients. By far, they're the largest voting bloc. And to think that somehow the debt limit isn't going to be passed and we're not going to spend dollars on those things, but we'll spend dollars on giving you credits, tax credits to buy an electric car or pay off somebody else's student loan, is nutsos. We are not going to do that. Anybody who says that we are, you know, they're probably going to get voted out of office.
Yeah, essentially, you're saying it's political suicide.
It's suicide, and it's not reality, and all it does is cause fear.
Does it really come down, when it comes to the debt ceiling, does it come down to increasing taxes and cutting the budget to pay off that debt, or is there more to it?
Well, there's a little more to it. Growth becomes a part of that. How much can our economy grow? The more it grows, the more taxes it receives, et cetera. But it comes down to really, we've got to pay attention to how much we're spending and what we're spending it on. We have decided that we will, as a country, that we think that things like Social Security, Medicare are very, very important. Nobody wants to get rid of those. But we've also decided that maybe if we spend, there's not a consequence to that. But we're finding out that there is a consequence to that. You know, one of the things that's really interesting, that people think that America's going down, and I always laugh and I say, it's not going down. Financially, we're one of the strongest countries in the world. That's a shock to most people. We are the strongest country in the world. And so, hooray for America, right? But sometimes we get thinking that it's all so bad news. Now, I would tell you, sometimes we have to raise taxes. Most people don't like their taxes raised. Sometimes we have to cut back. Most people don't want to cut back, especially if it's their program. But it's like any individual or a family. They have to decide what's going to be really important, and then we spend our money on those things. It's fiscal responsibility, and fiscal responsibility at times is viewed as something that is negative, or you only say no to me. So let me tell you this. This is how, in the world that we live in, conservatives look at every expense, everything we spend money on, as a waste or a cost. And liberals look at everything that we spend money on as an investment. Well, neither one of those in their extreme are true, but the combination of the two typically are. So we have to spend money on certain things. We want good roads, right? We want good schools. We want those things, so we have to fund them. And then we also want things to take care of the worst in our society economically, right? So there's always financial safety nets for those people. If we don't have those things, we end up having chaos in our streets. And we've voted and said, we don't want that. And so what do we do to prevent that? Well, we can't do too much is the issue.
Al Hicks playing it politically down the middle. And we are back with more after this. Stay right there.